Hi everybody and welcome back. We are now in 2024, which means we are starting Winter Anime 2024 season, and it looks pretty packed. So I'm just going to jump right into this. This is going to be my first in a series of first impressions videos, similar to what I did last year, where I'm just going to go through after I've watched the first episodes of premiering shows. This is not going to cover sequels. I will go ahead and get to those in another video later on. And in the interest of getting this video out as quickly as possible, because I have to beat all the other anitubers, I'm going to do this hopefully at the end of every week for the first few weeks until everything has aired. So it is Friday, January 5th, and I already have a substantial list of things that I have checked out. There will be some that have aired that I'm not checking out just because they're not in my wheelhouse. But I'm just going to go ahead and get on into it. The first one that I checked out is Ishura. In a world where the Demon King has died, a host of demigods capable of felling him have inherited the world, but we don't understand that in the first episode. That is not made clear whatsoever. In the first episode, we start following a specific girl, and as such, her entire town is completely decimated, and she gets to watch her best friend get her legs and arms torn off. It's very brutal for brutal's sake, and then she is saved by a wandering, cocky, arrogant swordsman who said he just does it because it's fun. So we don't understand this demigod situation. That's not remotely made clear. The girl has made mention of wanting him killed because she blames him for the decimation of her village, which is actually done by a walking labyrinth which rises up from the ground, spawning mech creatures which kill everyone. I don't know. Passione Studios is the one that did this. They're the ones who did Rhino Flops from a few years ago, which I did enjoy. It was an interesting take on sort of an AI storyline. The action scenes in this look good. The CG is terrible. I'm not a CG fan. We'll do that. There are some ways to make use of it that are actually okay, that I don't mind. This one, from the onset of the show, was a little off-putting, and I couldn't put my finger on it, but it almost looks like the main characters are partially CG'd, while the backgrounds are all hand-drawn. So it makes this really awkward texture effect, which kind of affects how the animation is rendered, and it looks very strange. That said, the fight scene animations are good. They're great. The character designs are passable. There's nothing super special about them. The monster were all mechs in a fantasy world, which was kind of weird. It jumped different animation styles because at one point it goes to this almost traditional ink drawing to try and portray who the swordsman is or what his power is. The other demigods, as they're referred to in the synopsis that you're going to read online, are kind of mentioned at the end of the episode, but they're referred to as visitors. So it's unclear if this is going to be some weird fantasy isekai, and this is definitely the season for isekai. There's already been quite a few on this list that I'll get to, but I'm not sure. I'm gonna try Ishura for a couple more episodes, but the first episode didn't catch me. I finished it and went eh. And usually that's not a good sign for me. Most of the time, after the first episode, I'm pretty on board or not. So we'll just have to see how this one goes. If any of that sounds interesting, go ahead and check it out. It looks like it's trying to build a large mythology around everything, and sometimes a lot of these bite off more than they can chew, especially in anime form where you don't know if you're going to get more than one season. And I've not read the manga for this one, so I'm I'm unaware of where it goes or how it goes, but after the first episode, I'm not entirely convinced. So going into the second one, I'm actually doing this in order that I watched them. Otherwise, I would have saved this one for last because this is one of the ones I was looking forward to, and that is Gushing Over Magical Girls. This is the one I was concerned about with High Dive stating they were going to get the ATX license to show this uncensored, because this is basically a comedy S&M Madoka Magica. It's the only way you can describe it, but I will say High Dive, as of the first episode, it does appear to be the uncensored version of the show, obviously because there's nudity and things to that nature from the jump. It's not really, I want to say it's not necessary, but it is part of the original source material, so it is good that they kept it in, didn't massively edit things out like that. One thing I will say, because I have been reading this manga for about a year now, the show does not, the artwork does not keep up with the original source material. The artwork in the manga is way, way more detailed. The anime kind of smooths over some of that, so you lose a little bit of detail there. And so that was a little bit disheartening. Outside of that, I enjoyed it. I mean, the basic thing is Hiragi Utena, major fangirl of Magical Girls, is inadvertently drafted into the evil organization opposed to Magical Girls by basically a tiny little evil creature, very much like Madoka Magica, and she at that point just becomes this unstoppable sadist evil magical girl who gets a lot of pleasure from torturing, tickling, binding the magical girls that she goes to school with, but they don't know who each other are. Like I said, I've been reading this manga for a while. The manga is very funny. It goes into some really crazy things. The cast of characters is very varied, and I can't wait for some of them to actually come into the show, because I think that's really kicks in. Don't get me wrong, Utena is adorable. I absolutely adore her character. The facial expressions she makes during everything are just spot on. They're hilarious. And so far, High Dive has actually done what they said they're going to do, unlike another show on this list that I will get to. But so far it seems to be uncut, and I've been enjoying it. I watched the first episode and went, yeah, this is going to be an enjoyable one. It's a manga I enjoy. It's an anime I was hopeful for, and so far it seems like it's going to be pretty good. But I will say I don't know what is up with all the S&M this season, because this is not the only one. Speaking of, we're going to move right on to the second one that fits into that category, that was also part of my other video talking about editing in High Dive, and that's going to be Chainedsoldier. So Chainedsoldier, Yuki Wakura basically exists in a world where there is a gateway to an alternate dimension. Basically, once this gateway opened up, all females in the regular world were able to eat these items called peaches, which gave them supernatural powers. However, it only worked on females. So basically, at that point, men become subservient to all of the women in one way or the other. But basically, also because of that, women are tasked with defending the real world from the demon world. So Yuki, as he's walking home from a job interview, accidentally ends up in Mato, which is the alternate dimension. I don't really know what other way. It's a plane of existence that exists simultaneously. So he ends up there, and he is rescued by the chief of the 7th Unity of the Anti-Demon Corps. I am having to read this. I do apologize, but I wanted to get this out as quick as possible. So it's Kyoka Uzen comes and rescues him. Now, her power is basically enslavement. It's the only really way to say this. So she basically enslaves the monsters native in Mato and uses them as her mounts, or uses them to battle other creatures there for her benefit. But pretty quickly it shows that her power over them isn't particularly the best. The creatures aren't overly fast or strong. And in a bid to save some small children that also wandered into Mato, she asks Yuki if he would be her slave. There's no way around it. It's literally phrased that way. He go ahead and agrees. Here's where we get into the craziness. She holds out her finger. He sucks on her finger, and he turns into basically a giant demon creature to help defend the children and her. These are some strange things I'm having to say in this video, but oh well. So moving forward from that, one quick note, I will mention this one also does appear to be uncensored, as High Dive had mentioned before. However, the first episode, it was very on the tame side, as the manga was, this part of the story arc was fairly tame because it was a lot of setup. So I didn't expect much from this episode in the way of censorship anyway. So it remains to be seen, but as far as I can tell, it is. So after he transforms, defends the children, defend her, he turns back into his regular self, and she asks if he would like to continue working with her. He agrees, thinking he's going to become a hero. At this point, she starts voraciously making out with him because her ability forces her to reciprocate whatever is in the thing that she enslaved is on their mind, and he is a teenage boy. The monsters, as she mentions, were happy with pork slices. He gets made out with, and he says, "You don't have to do this," and she goes, "I literally can't stop it. This is, my body moves without my controlling it." As you can probably guess, the reason why this is censored, as it goes on, it gets more and more lewd, at least through the manga. And there are other characters that come into play as well, so it remains to be seen with the other seventh group how this goes. So the episode kind of ramps to the end, and she invites him into the dormitories of the 7th unit, and he's all excited to be a hero, and then she goes, "Here's our new caretaker." Little goddess of the dormitory vibes there. And that's basically where it ends. He meets the other people who are his senpai within this world. And there's a lot of other stuff. His sister was killed at one point in Mato, and all of the other characters. There's four main characters in the dormitory for the 7th unit. They all have interesting backstories. One thing I did appreciate about the manga is the characters are they all have interesting personalities. So I'm hoping that that comes into play. The animation's okay. The character designs are fine. Once again, we run into that issue of the manga's artwork is more detailed. They lost a lot of that going into the animation. And the creatures themselves kind of have this weird borderline CG. I mean, they're probably pretty obviously CG to some people, but they have a very weird shading to try and hide it, and it only kind of half does it. So it lost a little bit for me there, but because I am a fan of the manga, I'm going to continue with this one because the story itself is actually enjoyable. But I'm hoping that they kind of iron out some of that animation going forward. On to the next one. Okay, this next one, I initially started the manga quite some time ago, got bored, and moved on. It is still on my list to read. I've got like 2,000 books I need to get through, and it's going to take some time. That one is My Instant Death Ability is Overpowered. Once again, another one on High Dive that's censored. And it's censored for gore. And it's not particularly gory, and it's censored poorly. I'm talking about where there is a person that gets a dragon tail through them, and it is a vertical line of shadow through the gore. It is bad. When you're going to get two that are obviously way more censored, if anything. I don't understand the concept of this one. They don't generally tend to be that bad. Eh. But another isekai. Yay. Yogiri Takato missed out on a few things while napping during a school trip. Basically, main character, you learn very little about him. The story just jumps in where he's having some sort of dream where he's a small child and the person he cares about is held at gunpoint. He looks at the person holding hostage and that person dies. He then awakens in a bus and we find out that his class was on a field trip, and when they made it through a tunnel they were in a fantasy world. A pretty blonde sage, who is actually a horrible person, at that point tells them that they need more sages in the world, so they're all going to be granted abilities. She also says this after killing the bus driver and their teacher after her jokes don't land. So, all but 4 people are granted an ability. The people granted the abilities leave those 4 as decoys to be eaten by a dragon. Well, as you can tell, 2 of those people are immediately killed by the dragon. Then we have Takato and Danora. He protects her, basically, all while showing off the fact that he has an instant death ability. When he looks at anything and tells it to die, it does. He also has the other ability to know if anyone has killing intent towards him so that he can kill them as well. This all comes out when 3 of their classmates come back to, I think their plan was to assault Danora. I say I think when I know it is because they literally tell him that. Upon which Takato actually kills 2 of them, enslaves the other one, and sends him into a forest to die. It's a comedy. It's an isekai comedy that doesn't take itself too seriously and is kind of honestly real cringe. Like, I'm gonna try give it a couple more episodes, but I might drop this one and just go back to the manga when I have some time to kill and nothing sounds interesting. Character designs are uninspired. It is as generic as you can get, to be completely honest. It's not the worst thing I've ever seen, but it's also something that's going to, unless it ratchets up and does something unique, it's going to be one of those forgettable isekais. And I think so far I've seen 4 or 5 isekais this season. That's just in the first week, so you're not hard pressed. So in all honesty, maybe skip this one. Alright, moving on to one I was actually very excited about because it is a manga that I've been reading, and Netflix tried to hide this one from me when I was scrolling through Crunchyroll. Haha, Netflix. I found it. Is the newest thing from Trigger. And I was very, very surprised that they were on this one, and then I started noticing some of their usual textures they use. And this one is Deliciousindungeon. Young adventurer Laos and his team, Laos, and his team are at the start of the show fighting a red dragon while he is just off in his own little world in his head. He is saved by his sister. His sister at that point is then eaten by the dragon, and then she casts magic to kick all the rest of the party back out of the dungeon. Upon reappearing outside of the dungeon, all of the party has left except for 3 people. And Laos, I'm bad at pronunciation, he starts suggesting, hey, how about you guys leave the party? I'll sell your gear. I'll go back in, save my sister, because dragons digest slowly. This is a typical fantasy world. Even if you die, you can be revived, so very low stakes. They refuse to do this, so it's once again back into the dungeon with very little money, and they don't know how they're going to get food. And that is when the idea from him comes up, why don't we just eat the monsters? Enters into a little dwarf who has been living in the dungeon for a decade, and he starts to show them all about the wonders of cooking monsters. It is enjoyable, it is low stakes, it's all about the food. it's a manga I've been reading. It's fantastic. It's, like I said, it's low stakes. Trigger's doing this, so it's obviously got some pedigree behind it. Not that you really need it for this. It's not an action heavy show. It's basically just something that is enjoyable to watch. And I highly recommend this one for anybody. It's lighthearted, it's funny, it's animated really well. Everything's good about it. I really can't say anything bad about it. It's all translated very, very well from the manga. So, Deliciousindungeon, I'd say check that one out. All right, two more. Sorry for the long video. I tried to crank through as many this week as I could, and there's still shows that I've completely skipped that I might check out just to see. But the next one, I don't know what to think because I had no idea anything about this. Silverlink did it, and it's Sasaki and Peeps. Sasaki is a middle-aged office worker just kind of living his life. Dude is obsessed with cute, cuddly animals, and because he's almost 40 and depressed, he goes out one day and buys a bird. He goes to the pet store. Dogs and cats are too expensive, and then he hears this little Java sparrow off in the corner. Pick me, pick me. 3,000 yen later, he's going home with a bird. Bird's got a little star-shaped emblem on its chest, little star pupils. I get the feeling this is going to be a magical girl bird. We'll see. But basically, Peep starts talking to him and says that she is some sort of reborn sage, was kicked from her world, reincarnated into a bird. Thus starts the slow life of him buying things in the real world, teleporting to the other world, selling them, and then coming back. Kinda isekai? Kinda. And I thought, okay, another slow life. There's a lot of those online shopper saving 50,000 gold. This is not a new idea. There are a lot of shows about people transporting back and forth to make money from that, you know, buying stuff in the real world at Don Quixote and then going to the fantasy world and making bank off selling paper. But it didn't stop there. He starts learning magic. Then one night he's at a going away party for one of his kohai, and he leaves and he sees a man attacking a woman. The man turns his arm into a giant sword. He goes to attack her, and Sasaki puts an icicle through the man's chest. At that point, he realizes that both the attackee and the attacker also have powers, but they're not magical ones like his, because he can use all sorts of different magic, whereas they are psychics. And the girl who was attacked works for the Japanese government as a kind of psychic monitoring system. Sasaki soon learns that all psychics only possess one talent. So now he has become employed by the Japanese government to watch out for other psychics with different powers and abilities, all while trying to have a slow life isekai world life. It's like somebody took a dartboard and just started throwing darts at it. It's like, we're going to include this, we're going to include this, we're going to include this. And in all honesty, it kind of works. Like, the first episode was 48 minutes long. I wasn't bored at all. The characters are likable. The writing is moderately interesting. The character designs are generic as can be. There's nothing super crazy about them. There aren't really action scenes to speak of, so it's not like a high intensity Fate style show at all. It's just kind of a comedy fantasy isekai, but also if you're looking at the tags, you're getting Maho Shoujo, so it's kind of saying there's going to be magical girls at some point. So I'm kind of, it's just like an anime melting pot of everything. So I'm really interested in this one because I want to see where it goes. But if you have the time and any of that sounds interesting, Sasaki and Peeps, I think might tick a lot of those boxes because it's bonkers. Like, it's just so much jammed into one thing, but it's all done adequately. Like, nothing kind of falls off. It's all interwoven in in a good way. All right, getting into the last one that I checked out this week, and that is The Wrong Way to Use Healing Magic. Ordinary walk home from school, that's the isekai conundrum, turns into an epic journey for Usato. So basically, Usato forgot his umbrella. The student council president and vice president start walking home with him because they have an extra umbrella. All of a sudden, student council president and vice president start hearing bells. Usato doesn't hear those bells, but he starts walking towards them, and all of a sudden a magic circle appears underneath all three of them. And they're transported into another world because this is the season for isekai. It's like comedy shield hero at this point, because those two are heroes. Student council president, thunder magic. Vice president, light magic. Usato, technically not a hero, didn't hear the bells. He puts his hand on the crystal ball, green. Everyone freaks out and goes, we gotta hide him. And that's when you find out that healing magic is apparently exceedingly rare. So then he is basically kidnapped by the leader of the rescue team, who is a large, scary, scary woman, who apparently her subordinates say that will put him through hell to teach him how to use healing magic. I've been meaning to read the manga. The first few volumes out, I just haven't gotten around to it. Honestly, it feels like a comedy shield hero without all the negativity. It's so far it's just really goofy. The character designs are fine. Everything's fine. It looks good. We're just stocked on isekai this season, my guys and girls. Like, honestly, it is. This is only the first. This is like the first week of the season, and I've already banged through so much isekai, and I guarantee there's 3 or 4 more that I haven't even checked out yet. My list to check out's got another 20 shows or so. I'm gonna be really tired, and I still got games to play and videos to make, a visual novel to work on that I keep putting off. But it's okay, because we have the isekai to keep us warm through this cold, dark time. Maybe that's why we're getting all this isekai. But yeah, The Wrong Way to Use Healing Magic. If you need something goofy, as of the first episode, real goofy. It's fun, not in a negative, bad way. It's more or less generic, but on the good end of generic. But with that, this video has now been almost 30 minutes long. This is actually longer than an entire episode of anime, because those clock in at 21 minutes once you remove the intro and outro. With that, I'm going to sign off here. I'm going to get this edited. I'm going to make a screenshot to thumbnail, throw up on YouTube, and get this uploaded. I hope everyone had a safe and wonderful new year. Welcome to 2024. Let's keep on trucking to the best of our abilities. We've got a lot of anime to watch, so as per always, read more manga, watch more anime, and you're in luck if you want to be isekai, because there's a lot. Have a good one.